You are watching Beyond the News. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Okay, so get ready, because we're diving into a story today that's really got some layers to it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one for sure.
We're looking at the case of Reverend Richard Hines.
Okay.
Now, he's a Jamaican pastor
Right.
here in Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
and he is facing some charges.
I see.
Charges that are pretty serious.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, it's playing out against this backdrop
Okay.
of Jamaica's cultural landscape,
Interesting.
which is, it's a complex one.
Absolutely.
So we've got a news excerpt as our source today.
Okay.
And trust me, there's a lot to unpack here.
I bet. Well, what makes this case so interesting is that it kind of shines a light on this
Yeah.
intersection between individual actions and
What-
how people perceive cultures.
Exactly. And you're probably wondering at this point, well, what exactly happened?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here?
What are the charges?
So the news excerpt lays out some pretty serious allegations against Reverend Hines.
Okay.
He's been charged with third-degree rape and sexual misconduct with a minor.
Wow.
And this alleged incident took place on Christmas Eve in 2022.
Okay, so to really understand how weighty this situation is,
Yeah,
we need to understand Reverend Hines' role in the community.
absolutely.
He held the position of executive director for the 67th Precinct Clergy Council.
Right?
And these councils, they're really vital in the community. They act as like a bridge between the police
Mm-hmm.
and the community itself, working towards peace and understanding.
Yeah, it's a big role.
It is a big role.
A lot of trust comes with that.
Absolutely. So you can imagine these charges have had quite an impact.
Definitely. And the source also points out that
Yeah.
Reverend Hines being Jamaican adds another layer here,
Okay.
especially because Jamaica has a reputation for some
Oh.
pretty strict views on homosexuality.
It's important to remember that Jamaica's relationship with LGBTQ plus rights is complicated.
Yeah.
It has deep roots in the country's history.
Mm-hmm.
There is a widespread perception that there's strong opposition to homosexuality,
Right. Yeah.
influenced by things like colonial laws and religious doctrine,
Okay.
but the reality is more nuanced than that.
So it's not so cut and dry.
It's not.
Yeah.
You know, there are organizations like J-Flag,
Okay.
that's the Jamaica Forum for Lesbians, All Sexuals, and Gays.
Mm-hmm.
They're working hard to advance LGBTQ plus rights, and they challenge discrimination.
So even though there are these challenges that you mentioned,
Yes.
deeply ingrained biases,
Right.
it's not a totally one-sided situation.
Exactly.
There's more to it.
There's more going on.
This case could spark a lot of discussion,
Yeah, definitely.
not just within the Jamaican community here in Brooklyn,
Right.
but also in how people view Jamaican culture in general.
Absolutely.
It really challenges those assumptions
It does.
that we make about entire groups of people.
You hit the nail on the head. It highlights how dangerous it can be to jump to conclusions about an entire culture
Right.
based on one person's actions.
Exactly.
This case really shows why critical thinking is so important.
So what does all this mean for our listeners? It's a reminder to look beyond the surface,
Mm-hmm.
to see the nuance and complexity
Yeah,
that shape situations like this,
it is.
to challenge those assumptions that we have.
Yeah.
And remember that what one person does
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily reflect
No.
the beliefs of an entire culture.
Exactly. One person doesn't represent an entire group.
So as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
How can we as individuals navigate this world
Okay.
that feels more and more interconnected every day,
Right.
where people's personal actions
Yeah.
quickly become global news?
That's a great question.
Oh,
I think it's about promoting deeper understanding.
okay.
Understanding of that intricate relationship between individual actions
Mm-hmm.
and how cultures are perceived,
Right.
but doing it without oversimplifying
Yes.
or resorting to prejudice.
That's a great point to think about.
It's something we all need to consider.
Absolutely.
It's an ongoing challenge.
It is. Thanks for joining me today.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
I'm sure our listeners will have a lot to think about.
I hope so.